Good morning, America. Welcome from the Rescuing Our Communities podcast. I am Clayton, and today we're going to take a small break from my six-part series discussing how you can effectively fight a prosecutor who may have violated your civil rights. And we're going to talk about something that relates to prosecutors, which is the absolute immunity, the immunity that is supposed to be imposed on officers of prosecutors when they are involved in the duties of being a prosecutor. And for that reference today, I took the recent verdict granted to President Trump, where he has been granted broad immunity against basically any wrongdoing he can do. People, the decision just rendered by SCOTUS, I believe it was the day before yesterday or 2 days ago, is insane. So the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, everybody has a cool acronym to their name now. The First Lady is FLOTUS. The President is POTUS. The Supreme Court is COTUS. So COTUS has enacted a ruling. And basically in that ruling, the ruling is so insane, they have granted Trump's attorneys more than they even asked for. They have granted Trump the absolute power to be immune from any type of prosecution as long as his act is done in the official duty of the presidency. It's so unheard of that it basically grants this man the right to kill his political opponents and get away with it, as long as he's acting under color of law and the president. Now, how does this affect us as common citizens? Old people, it affects the hell out of us because this case is going to be applied to government offices and government officials who do similar things to Trump, and they're going to get away with it as long as they're acting in their official capacity. See, prosecutors have what's called absolute immunity also, but it can be breached if you can prove that they have violated some, I would say, established constitutional statute. At least it's supposed to be. But are they really held accountable when they violate people's First Amendment rights? On the state level, yes. On the state level, I would say 50-50. On the federal level and in the district courts, there's a good substantial amount of case law where prosecutors and cities have been held accountable for violating people's 14th Amendment due protections, First Amendment rights, etc. The problem is, again, we get back to SCOTUS, people, because SCOTUS is the endpoint. The Supreme Court of the United States is the endpoint. No decision goes past there. So every time someone seems to win an argument that a prosecutor's office, whether it be state or federal, did violate due process, did violate their rights, something to that effect, the Supreme Court usually reverses the decision because their rationale is that if they hold the people in these positions responsible, it may affect their decision making and create a problem with the need to enforce law enforcement and etc. But I don't think that's true, people. What I think the Supreme Court is doing, and what it is doing, by granting such a broad spectrum of immunity to prosecutors, and what it has just done with President Trump is insane, is they have created a class of supervillains that the common people like us citizens are going to have to deal with. See, most of these people in offices, they are people controlled by their ambitions and emotions. If you grant someone an absolute ability to violate someone's civil rights and create crime, you can't expect that person will always act within good faith to keep that immunity separated from their personal life. Who's really going to hold them accountable if they do something wrong? How is it going to be exposed if everyone involved in their administration or in the system or the office where the violation is coming from is involved in the violation? See, the simple fact of the matter is, people, it won't. So what the Supreme Court has just done is probably violate the rights of 300 million Americans, because this is going to be applied on so many different levels that tens of thousands of people's rights are about to be violated. Now, I could talk about President Trump a little more, but I won't. What I'll do is actually play a really great interview I saw the other day regarding this. So hold on. Okay, so this is from MSNBC. I like CNN, but it's the same thing, because when MSNBC talks about it too, and it's against Trump, it's pretty big. So hold on.
Rachel Maddow, host of the Rachel Maddow Show, whose award-winning podcast Ultra is now in its second season, and I've been gobbling up every episode of that. Rachel, just your thoughts. I remember talking to you the day of oral arguments when we did a special, and I think everyone's reaction to that was, "Whoa, are they going to do this?"
Yeah.
We got our answer.
I remember talking to you about this, Chris, the day they chose to take it up. I mean, the decision to take it up itself was so gobsmacking. And I'm generally a glass half empty kind of person. I always see the cloud before I see the silver lining. But even when they took it up, I remember you and I talking about the radicalism of that decision in itself, because when the district court, the first level federal court, ruled on this issue, basically the rule was, duh, of course the president isn't immune. When the appeals court then looked at that and reviewed that decision, it was a unanimous, absolutely bulletproof decision from that appeals court where
See, people, state courts held them liable, district courts held them liable. Listen to what she says. People, it's always the Supreme Court. I am under the impression now, being newly legally knowledgeable, that the Supreme Court might be the most oppressive government agency or government panel in the United States of America. Yes, true, they have made some good decisions in the past and even present. I don't think Roe v. Wade was a good decision at all. This was definitely a horrible decision, but let's let this beautiful woman finish.
The bottom line was essentially, duh, of course, no, a president can't be immune. So it was gobsmacking when the Supreme Court took it up. But I remember talking to you that day, and in my glass half empty kind of way, I thought, well, even under the worst case scenario, it's not like they're going to decide that he's immune. It's just outrageous that they've taken it up, because this will allow for months of delay and will effectively give him temporary immunity before the election. And once the election happens, if he wins, he makes all the prosecutions go away anyway. I really did not expect that they would do this. And they, Donald Trump and his counsel, asked for this 100% absolute immunity thing, which was insane. I would say they got 105% of what they were asking for. They got immunity from this court, despite some of the language in Justice Roberts's.
Now, what's insane about this, people, is that the Supreme Court of the United States just granted a president who was responsible for orchestrating a march on a government office, on the Senate. They just granted this guy broad immunity from being prosecuted for that or anything else he did. People, this country is in trouble, because when the Supreme Court, the ruling body of the land, makes a verdict like this, stating that a government official, a president, a prosecutor, anybody, because people, Trump's new broad immunity decision is going to be broken down lower into state and federal courts. And now these prosecutors and law enforcement who violate the civil rights of American citizens, they now have a new basis based on the decision of this Supreme Court ruling to fight plaintiffs who come after them for wrongdoing. People, this is insane, and this country's in trouble. That's why as soon as I get my bag from the NYPD, I'm moving abroad. But let's go.
The ruling saying that there was some measure of humility here, some measure of restraint. The practical impact of what they have done is to give Trump immunity that even he and his counsel did not ask for. And given that the hypotheticals over the course of these arguments, as you rightly pointed out, included things like, can the president assassinate a rival? I think we have to look at the Supreme Court's affirmative answer to that. Yes, you can.
So basically, from the Supreme Court's ruling, anybody who messed with Trump over the last 2 years, they're going to get it once he's in office. Because people, let's be honest, Trump's going to win this election. I would be highly surprised if President Trump, the Donald, did not win this election against Joe Biden. Joe Biden looked horrible in that presidential debate. Not saying he is, not saying he doesn't have the mental acuity or the mental capacity to hold the office of POTUS. But let's be honest, people, politics is not really about knowledge anymore and ability. It's about popularity. The president of the United States has become a mascot. I don't even think that it's a job that can be comparable to any other state leader. President Trump was never a politician. He's not a lawyer, yet they made this man director of the damn country. They made a reality TV show star, the president of the country. Now, yeah, they did that with Reagan because Reagan was a movie star. But I think the comparison between Reagan and Trump is the difference between night and day. Reagan was a man. Reagan had honor. President Trump is a piece of shit. I'm sorry. It has to be said. Many of you out there may agree with me. I actually think Trump's a piece of shit, but I respect him enough that I would vote for him over Joe Biden. I don't believe in Joe Biden. And see, this is the problem. No one believes in Joe Biden because of the physical and I would say the image he had during that debate that turned a lot of people off. Because again, like I said, he may have the mental acuity to do the job, but he does not look capable. And the problem is that the controlled politics of this country does not pick the most qualified candidate. It picks the most likable candidate. This is where the Democratic Party messed up. They picked Joe Biden because they literally had no one else by Obama. After Obama, if they were smart, they would have built up his wife and put his wife in office. At least that's what I think. I think Michelle Obama would have made an excellent first president. I think she would have made a better candidate than Joe Biden. Definitely. They should have had a plan in place for when Obama left office, because there is no one who can stand against the rhetoric of Trump. It's not that Trump is an excellent politician. It's not that he's a masterful statement. Trump is a showman. Trump is a celebrity. Trump knows how to work the people's emotions to get them on his side. He knows what to say. He knows what to do. I have watched some of Trump's marketing materials towards minorities and African Americans. Whoever he hired is a damn master, people. They making rap videos with T-shirts talking about my president, Black MAGA. I still remember when I saw the MAGA rallies where there was a bunch of white supremacists there. How can you support a man whose whole marching doctrine when he started was with white supremacy? But what do I know, people? Let's finish and let this woman continue, though, because I don't have all that.
With as much seriousness as it deserves. I mean, this is a death squad ruling. This is a ruling that says that as long as you can construe it as an official or quasi-official act, you can do absolutely anything, and never be held accountable, not only while you are president, but forever. And this is a president who has activated pro-Trump paramilitary groups that, wear insignia and T-shirts and hold placards celebrating literally right-wing death squads, right? This is a president who has talked about absolutely using the Justice Department to go after his rivals. This explicitly immunizes anything the president wants to do through the Justice Department, but all but explicitly justifies anything the president wants to do, full stop, to anyone. And that is as serious as it gets.
I'm 100% with you on that. I want to stay on the Department of Justice thing, because obviously, and there's reason why in those.
For those of you who don't know, the Department of Justice, next to Homeland Security, is actually, no, I think all of that's controlled by the Department of Justice. I have to look into that. My federal law departments is a little weak. But if the president can, the Department of Justice is $1 billion institution. It is funded by the federal government, and it is responsible for most major prosecutions within the country. The president has access to that. He literally is the button that can push the Department of Justice and say, yo, go get that motherfucker. They just gave Trump broad immunity to use the Department of Justice as a vehicle of vengeance. Now, why do I say that that's important? Because if someone is able to use law enforcement as a vehicle for vengeance, they have incredible power. I can relate to this as a male victim of domestic violence on a state level, where my ex-girlfriend was able to manipulate law enforcement and prosecutors to believe that I did something wrong, and they immediately came after me. Now, the problem was where these people were wrong. But the immunities put in place on the state level, protected by the federal government, is why they violated my civil rights so confidently. Because, see, even though they knew they were wrong, they're protected by absolute and prosecutorial immunity. Police are even protected by immunity. Police are protected by immunity from arrest and I would say, I'm looking for the right word here because I don't want to be disrespectful. Incorrect prosecutions. Police are really immune from that. Now, do the police get sued? Yes, because there was so much police brutality that it finally had to become acknowledged. The problem is there's just as much prosecutorial misconduct. But see, for the Supreme Court to address that would address the underlying mechanism of the criminal justice system. And they probably feel that this would in some way impede justice. I actually don't think it will. I think that if prosecutors and government officials who had this broad immunity were held accountable, it would regulate the profession so much that it may create a new breed of prosecutor who is focused on actually doing the right thing. Because let's be honest, if you put anybody in a position of power and tell them they can't get in trouble for fucking up, they're going to fuck up on purpose. You know why? They're going to do evil things on purpose. They're going to do malicious things on purpose because they can't get in trouble for it. So what does it matter if, oh yeah, this black guy is a victim? I don't like black people. So what I'm going to do is falsify the prosecution of his offender to get his offender off. And then if he complains against me, I can just hide behind the fact that I'm a prosecutor and make it seem like he didn't know what he was talking about or I made a mistake. And people, guess what? Prosecutors get away with this. People spend 20, 30 years in jail, 15 years in jail for crimes they didn't commit, whereas it's actually proven that prosecutors falsified evidence to get these people arrested. The state might give them a check, but the prosecutor and the law enforcement system that did it is not truly held accountable. The people who did it might not even be fired. They probably still have their job. The state will just give you some money to shut you the hell up and get you out of their face. And, long as there's a lot of money, most of the time people do take it. They use it for good things, like to advocate against the wrong that was done to them, like I intend to do. But it doesn't mean that these people that are doing these things should not be held legally and criminally accountable on the actual personal level to make them an example. Because as long as no one has ever made an example, people, the behavior continues. Let's take bank robbers. When a bank robber, banks used to get robbed all the time back in the old West. Finally, the federal government got tired of that shit because they were stealing so much, it was actually hurting the local economies and the federal economy. So what did they do? They started putting bounties and crazy prison sentences on bank robbers. Now, did it deter bank robbery? Oh, yes, it did. But it also created better criminals because they realized they really needed to get away with it. So you kind of created the super bank robber. But again, let's be honest, law enforcement adapted and they got arrested. We're going to use another example other than a bank robber. Let's see. Let's say when you kill a cop. Unfortunately, that does happen. Law enforcement acting in their ability to protect and serve are unfortunately murdered. I don't hate cops, people. I think cops that are actually doing their jobs that lose their life, that's an injustice. And yes, whatever idiot decided to do that, they deserve to be put under the jail unless the cop did something wrong. If the cop did something wrong and you got to handle your business, take his ass out. But if he's honestly acting under the color of his job, trying to defend people, maybe he's involved in trying to stop a suspect, that man has been wrong. And yes, whoever killed him should go to jail for the rest of their life. They can't let a cop kill off. Because by not prosecuting those who kill cops, you leave the impression that the leniency of killing the cop you could possibly get off, and there would be more killings against police. So what did the government do? What did the federal government do? They imposed such strict punishments on murdering law enforcement officials that you really do think twice before you do it. Now, we have to look at this in the terms of how this affects everyone. It affects everyone like this. If you don't make an example, of the people who are doing wrong, if you allow them off, if you don't take it as seriously to make the larger public at whole believe this is something that not everybody should do, people, it's just going to be repeatedly done and it's going to be done more. And this is what's about to happen with this decision. See, senators, judges, congressmen, these people are in government positions that are designed to effectuate the government. In that capacity, sometimes they make mistakes. It's true. Everyone makes mistakes. They're human. I'm not someone who's going to sit back and just attack people for being wrong. You can make a mistake. God makes no one perfect but himself and the energy that creates the universe. So we can't sit back and say that these people are doing everything intentionally. Sometimes they're just wrong, but a lot of the times they're doing it intentionally. So to grant this absolute broad spectrum of immunity where they can't be punished, you're just, again, creating a class of supervillains that literally have the right to do whatever the hell they want as long as they're on the clock. That's wrong. But let's let this woman finish. It's not about...
hypothetical offered by a federal judge in the appeals court arguments about SEAL Team 6, and then talked about in SCOTUS, and then in the decision, why that has had such... significance, right? But that is a hypothetical. It hasn't happened in American history. What has happened in American history is a president, Richard Nixon, using the Justice Department, the IRS, all kinds of faculty. I mean, he had the IRS audit his political enemies. He attempted to use the Justice Department to go after...
I forgot about Nixon. He sent the IRS after people. What's the other thing? Watergate. Nixon was the old school Trump. He couldn't do as much as Trump. He couldn't use the language Trump used because it was a much more reserved time. But let's be honest, people. President Nixon was the old school Trump. Trump is just a new modernized version of Nixon. He uses government offices as tools of vengeance, as tools of injustice. Trump is just Nixon. Let's just be honest.
Political enemies. That's not a hypothetical. That's just American history. And coming out of that, and you're someone who's been a sort of historian of this period for a lot of reasons, there was a conclusion that Watergate was wrong and that what Nixon did to the federal government was wrong. And one of the readings of Roberts today is Watergate was not prosecutable, maybe, and what Nixon did as president, he probably was immune for, and too bad that John Roberts wasn't around in 1974.
Navan, it's the business travel platform that's taking the world by storm. Every employee can book their own.
I mean, the executive, sort of the imperial executive idea, pioneered by Republican Justice Department officials like Ed Meese and brought to its sort of governing apex under Dick Cheney and the kinds of people who worked in Republican politics to approve the sorts of things that happened, particularly after 9/11 under the George W. Bush White House. Those have now been brought by bringing a bunch of people who were part of that cultural milieu in the legal world, by bringing them into a supermajority in the Supreme Court. That has brought us to a place where a president has had his lawyers asked by a justice in open court, are you saying your guy can assassinate someone and he will have immunity for that? The answer was yes, and the court wrote it down. And that answer is the logical, apex of where those things are. It's the nadir, I suppose, of where those things go over time. But to have that radicalism land when you have a potential next term of Donald Trump on the horizon if he wins in November, where he is saying exactly.
Yo, we got to be honest, people. I don't know why people keep saying if, then acting like it. Like, you see how this gentleman just sighed because he knows the truth. Trump is going to win. Who is going to stop Trump from winning? The only way President Trump does not win is if two ways. One, he's removed from the race. Two, a candidate of such oratorial ability steps up with valid issues and able to handle the arguments of Trump. They don't have enough time for that, people. We're in July. The election's in November. That literally gives these people, 3 months? It's not going to happen, people. Trump's going to win.
What he will do with this power is quite a remarkable thing. You'll notice that nobody in reacting to today's ruling is saying, wow, how scary. What is Joe Biden going to do with this power? Right? Nobody is saying that. Nobody is worried that.
See? Exactly. She has an excellent point. Nobody's worried about Biden. Biden is a man who's not going to do something like Trump. See, prosecutorial and president immunity, broad immunity, doesn't affect everyone with it. Some people are actually good people. They're not trying to use the immunity they have to violate anyone's rights. They're not trying to break the law. They do realize that the immunity they hold is a position of is a benefit of the job to make effective decisions without them having the pressures of any of the decisions they're making, even though it legally coming back to them. Now, morally is a different story. A president who sends, let's say, a military squad into a country to do something, and let's say that whole squad is killed, yeah, he's going to be feeling the emotional of the effects, the ethical effects, the moral effects, of the death of these men. But he's not legally responsible for it. And Biden is such a man. He's old. I believe Biden is old, but I believe fundamentally Biden's not Trump. He's a good guy. He wouldn't use that broad spectrum to go after his enemies, at least not directly like that, where he's boasting about it openly in public. Trump has threatened to literally attack everyone who has come after him in the last 4 years. And that's a problem, people, because people have worked against this people. So now with these broad powers of immunity, once this man wins the election in November, and again, people, he will, in January, everyone who went after Trump, you got a problem. This is a hell of a ruling, people.
A president like Joe Biden is going to, abuse this in such a way that is going to bring about a de facto dictatorship. But because that is what Trump is explicitly promising for any next term that he wins in the White House, and this conservative.
And people, he did promise that. He literally promised what this woman just said, and that the Supreme Court gave him the ability to do it. People, this country is in trouble. Again, if you have any means or anything to do, my recommendation is get the fuck out of here, people. A brief deviation from the current story. About a week ago, the NYPD offered me about 6 figures for the false arrest that I was imposed on at the hands of Francina Evans, my ex-girlfriend who was stalking me. And I was pretty happy, people, because 6 figures is a nice bag. My lawyer gets a cut, and I'll still walk away with 6 figures for these false arrests. But it doesn't stop the problem that many African-American men and minority men face of these false arrests and malicious prosecution by corrupt and unjust law enforcement officials. So I hired a new lawyer, super lawyer Tyrone Blackburn, the little odd lawyer. He's now my lawyer against Staten Island DA and the NYPD, effectively fighting this case for the injustice that I was imposed on. Now, the prosecutor's office, actually, let me back up. The state of New York, you can sue for prosecutorial misconduct in terms of malicious prosecution. New Jersey, you can't, but New York, you can. So this lawyer has decided to take up my case, realizing the civil rights violations that were imposed on me by Staten Island's District Attorney, Michael McMahon. Will Mr. McMahon be held accountable in his office? Only time will tell us, people, again, because, prosecutors do have broad immunity, but there is New York case law where they were held accountable. So I'm hoping that they are held accountable for everything that was done to me. But do I believe it'll possibly happen? I actually don't, people. I believe that they're going to get off of what they did to me because of the scope and the magnitude of the office and the responsibility the office has to prosecute offenders and keep crime down. Now, true, they may be racist. They may be bigots. They may unethically use the ability of the office to go after guys like me. But people, I'm 1 in probably 100. There's a lot of criminals out there. So they're not going to jeopardize the administrative integrity of this office by penalizing them for prosecuting and setting one person up. No, people, they're just going to offer me a shit ton of money. They might cite the officers who did this to me. They'll probably fire the advocate from the Richmond County DA's office who lied and told me and that's unfortunate because she's a black woman. I don't want that, but she did do me wrong. So if this is what happens in this lawsuit where she's held accountable, she's going to be made the fall guy. And I don't personally think that's fair to her. I think that the people who told her to not honor my order of protection should 100 be held accountable. But the truth is, they won't be. They're going to just offer me a shit ton of money. They're probably going to discipline the officers, and then they're going to close out my case. Now, as long as they offer me 7 figures, I don't care. I'll take the 7 figures all day for a false arrest for my ex-girlfriend, all day. I can't wait for it either, because they damn sure offered me 6 figures about a week ago.
Court knows it, and a third of it was appointed by him. They're doing this in the full context, the full knowledge of the radicalism of what they're bringing down upon the country. And the only solution to this, the only way out of this, is to have non-criminals and non-authoritarian-minded would-be dictators win presidential elections.
Yeah.
That is the only way to fix this, because if you have somebody who is a criminal or is authoritarian-minded, when they get in there armed with this ruling, there is nothing they cannot do.
And people, that's important what she just said. What that woman just said is incredibly important. Because if you have people like this in presidential offices, you don't think you have district attorneys who are corrupt people, malicious people that win these district attorney elections and are now in power. People, that's what they do. The same thing that's applied to the massive level of the president can also be trickled down to state and federal courts, state and federal administration. These people placed in these positions, if they're not just ethically and morally sound people, this is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to get in office and they're going to manipulate that office to serve their own interests, like the racist district attorney of Staten Island, Michael McMahon. And it's wrong, people. They have violated the civil rights of black men, at least where I'm originally from on Staten Island, my entire life, people. I don't remember a just Staten Island. I don't remember a Staten Island where minority men were safe. I don't remember that. I remember a Staten Island where minority men were beaten. I remember a Staten Island where minority men were falsely arrested. I remember a Staten Island where innocent minority men were killed by racist detectives and racist officers. I remember a Staten Island that used to jump and beat up my friends when the TNT used to catch us back in the 90s. I remember a Staten Island where cops used to call me nigger kid. I remember that, people. This was the Staten Island I grew up on. The Staten Island Clayton grew up on was highly racist. The Staten Island that Clayton fights against is still racist, but it hides its racism under covert administration. And that's wrong, people. And this is where my fight comes from. But let's continue.
On that final point, the prospective implications of today's ruling are more profound in some ways and more unnerving than the retroactive ones because I mean about the trial. And we're going to talk about this. What does it mean actually for the case that Jack Smith has, which is still alive, we should note, which I they can cabin enough of this to bring that. We'll see and talk about it. A little unclear. But the symbolic meaning to me is almost as important as the legal meaning. For the reasons that you say, what it says to Trump, what it says to Republicans, I mean, the joke I made today was like John Roberts pulled down the American flag, turned it upside down, and like hoisted it back up over the Supreme Court. It felt to me like the opinion was like, we're with you on this. Over and above its findings, its holdings as a matter of constitutional law, its sort of communicative aspect.
Yeah, I mean, if the president, when Donald Trump, running for president in 2016, started leading crowds in that "lock her up" chant, as shocking as it was,
that was crazy. I know a lot of people remember that 2016 "lock her up, lock her up." That was Hillary Clinton. Trump is a masterful showman, people. This is what our country has done. This is what the Republican Party, a party that actually controls the country, has done to us, people. They have put a masterful showman in the place, in the most important government office in the country. They allow this man to use charisma and rhetoric to control the country. Not a sound legal mind, not a sound mind knowledgeable of the law and ethical principle. No, they want the contender. They put the contender up just to convince us that he was the most important person on earth. People, I'm moving. I swear to God.
Most of the country, it was a transgressive thrill to Trump and his followers because they knew it sounded so wrong. But they enjoyed that transgressive thrill so much that it became policy. And we know that Trump, in fact, tried to get his Justice Department to bring improper politically motivated prosecutions against people while he was president, and indeed to improperly exclude him from federal investigation in the case that ultimately resulted in state court in his 34 felony convictions in New York. So we know that he is very, very facile with this. This is what he wants to do. This is what he thinks power should be. Who's my Roy Cohn, right? And now the Supreme Court has said without reservation and without limit, yeah, you can do that. We promise you explicitly in the ruling, in the language of the ruling, not even in a footnote, anything you say to your Justice Department is subject to immunity for you. And that.
So briefly, what does this mean for President Trump's 34 New York convictions? I'm going to tell you what it means. They ain't going nowhere. He's going to get off. He's not going to jail. Once he wins the election in November, he's going to pardon himself, and he's going to get away with all of this. People, this is wrong. This is insane. But again, people, this is the United States of America. This is the country that our forefathers fought for, that Black people fought for civil rights. And this is what all of those people who fought and died for the rights of American citizens. This is the culmination of 200 years of work. To be led by a clown showman who is using government offices that he controls to go after his political offenders, because the Supreme Court has granted him broad immunity to be completely immune from any wrongdoing he's doing. People, this case is about to affect so much in this country, people. There are going to be prosecutors who wrong innocent people who are going to use this decision. There are going to be federal courts and federal judges who wrong people that are going to use this decision. There are going to be government offices that wrong and violate the rights of American citizens that are going to use this idiotic decision by this decrepit granular judges who are so far removed from the needs of the actual people that they don't know what the hell is going on. People, they don't even realize what they did. And if they do realize it, we're really in trouble, because that shows a level of maniacal planning, people, that shows that this country is on its way down.
The rule of law means in this country that the law is not used as an instrument of the ruler. The rule of law is supposed to constrain the ruler. And
that's an excellent point, people. You heard it. The rule of law is not meant to be used as a weapon of defense against the person imposing it. But people, that's what happened. The Supreme Court has just granted President Trump the right to do that. And if anyone thinks that this is not going to affect down into federal and state organizations and courts, you're a damn fool. All of these corrupt prosecutors, senators, and congressmen are about to use this ruling by SCOTUS to support their claims of broad immunity when they wrong people. And people, they're going to get away with it. I already see it. This case right here has made me totally afraid of the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, because my civil rights were violated by a racist white woman who used falsified information to let my offender off because she did not like me as a black man. This case for me right here probably means even if I went on the state and the district federal court level, that the Supreme Court is going to reverse my case and allow this corrupt, racist, lying woman to get away with the injustice she did to me. Luckily for me, she was so stupid, she brought me into a court on a personal level, which I'm filing a lawsuit because I can prove she lied. But people, I don't care about, my mission is not to attack this woman personally because I don't really care about her personally. I care about what she did to me in the job by violating my civil rights, which she 100% did. My mission is to hold her accountable under that office so the office itself changes and does not violate the rights of any more minorities. People, I probably won't get that though, because the office is so corrupt in a need to protect itself. They protected this racist white woman who a black man can prove lied. But people, injustice seems to be the way of the United States now. It's not something that we need, that we should use to allow ourselves to be deterred. No, people, knowledge is power. Elevating yourself is the only way to fight the trappings of slavery and imprisonment. Because being ignorant is what keeps you imprisoned in a system that is unjust to you. Being ignorant keeps you without results because you don't know what to do. When you learn the results, when you learn the mechanisms to fight injustice like this, now people, you might not be successful, but it puts you on a playing field where you at least stand a chance. Black men, without learning the law and learning your legal rights, you don't stand a chance in this country. Minority men, let me stop saying black men. Forgive me because I'm black, so I usually apply things to my skin color, but it's not about me, people. It's about anybody facing injustice. Many people may know that I don't talk negative, may realize that I don't even talk negatively about the person who offended me and did all of this to me. The truth of that is because I realize that person is not my problem. They are my problem. But the real problem is the injustice, the immoral action, and the unethical conduct of the people who helped the person who went after me. They are the true people that need to be responsible, not her. She's a broken-hearted loser who used racism and bigotry to attack someone she didn't like. Is she wrong? Yes. Was she successful? Yes. But should she be personally liable for it? No. The people who did this to me should be liable. She's nothing. She's nobody. She's broke. I don't want to do anything to her. I want the people who violated my civil rights to pay for it. I want the prosecutors who lied on me to pay for it. I want the cops who arrested me knowing I won an order of protection, that didn't like the fact that a black man won an order of protection and therefore decided to make me an offender. I want them held accountable. People, I want the prosecutor who lied on me, who took falsified information that falsely gave me a mental illness created by my offender. I want that woman in that office held responsible. And people, I might not win. I might spend thousands. I might spend my whole settlement from the NYPD fighting these corrupt, racist, unethical people. But I don't give a damn, people, because if my action, if my sacrifice of funds, if my sacrifice of advocacy actually changes what is going on in the situations where people are violated like this, then people, I've done my job and I can peacefully die. So let's continue before we get off.
And the Supreme Court just undid that, and it's binding, and it's now the way our country is structured. And the only way out of this, the only fix to this, there's no fix to this that involves impeaching Supreme Court justices. There's no fix to this that involves a new argument or a new case. The only fix to this is to put someone in the White House from here on out who will not abuse the absolutely tyrannical power they have just been legally granted.
Rachel is right. Rachel Maddow has an excellent podcast that I recommend anybody listen to. She's incredibly knowledgeable. She's incredibly intelligent, and the issues she speaks about are 100% on point. This woman is right. There is no defense against what SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, has just done to the American people. The only defense is that we take better means of putting the right people in office instead of the wrong people, people who will be evil, people who will use that office to maliciously prosecute and get vengeance on people who did nothing wrong or people who don't like. Rachel is 100% right.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me.
Must be over. So, people, to surmise, because we're going on 40 minutes. Wow, I didn't realize this was going to be so long. The CNN clip was only 10 minutes. People, to surmise, this country, people, we have a problem. They have just granted a government official broad immunity to use his position to do whatever he wants. People, President Trump could send someone to murder me right now and he would get away with it. People, we're in trouble. We're in trouble when someone that is basically a king or a dictator. He can't be in trouble. He cannot be penalized for any wrongdoing he done. Who else is like that? Dictators like Saddam Hussein. Who else is like that? Let me think of some really more bad people. Because some of the bad people who have been listed through history are not bad people, but there are some who are. Hitler, that was another one. All of these men who created so many injustices. Imagine if they were free from prosecution like Hitler was. This is insane, people. They even held Nixon accountable to an extent, but Nixon actually resigned. I'm wrong. So Nixon, they tried to impeach Nixon, but he resigned. The question is people, this is insane, people. This is truly insane. I don't want to keep stuttering about it because I'm kind of been on topic longer than I intended, which is 20 minutes. So people, know your rights. Pay attention to what's going on in this country because it's real. They just enacted the draft, people. They have all of this side conflict with Russia and these countries that they're not really telling us about. And now they have just granted a 100% ignorant dictator the right to do whatever the hell he wants. People, in the next 5 years, we are going to see some truly crazy happenings in the United States of America. Hopefully by then I'll receive my settlement from the NYPD in Essex County, and I'll be living in Bangkok, or I'll be living in Spain, or I'll be living somewhere else. Because people, my total intent once these is over is get the fuck out of this country. So on behalf of injustice and the fight against it, I am Clayton talking for Operation Rock. And I hope this was helpful to you. I hope this is a discussion that we can build on. This was a monumental decision, people, and this is going to negatively affect so many people that I don't even know what to say, people. On behalf of injustice, on behalf of the rights of American citizens, I'm Clayton Howard signing off. Have a great day.